this edition of Livestock Matters, WA Livestock Research Council Chair Tim Watts introduces 90 producers on a farm tour to a remarkable Manypeaks farmer, Kent Rochester. Tim is assisted by Kent's vet Jess Shilling in drawing out the story of how this farm was converted from Bluegums to a densely stocked beef operation with a daily rotational grazing program supported by technology and data-driven decision making.
So our farm really sort of came about, or our story, Michelle and myself, obviously I had an accident a while ago, and then after I'd finished with hospital and a bit of rehab, I was bored big time, so started mucking around on what was left of our family farm, and ended up buying that from Mum and Dad sort of in 2005, I think. We started just thinking we were hobby farmers with the idea that we'd just live off bluegum income. Not long later they sort of collapsed, and all of a sudden we were bluegum farm renovators. So we ended up fixing or renovating most of our farm and doing some other stuff. But it's sort of the first phase, I guess, of how things came about, and then as the farm became more of a commercial size and less of a hobby type block, things had to change. We have to employ people. We have to have labour because I can't do it all myself. So we have to be fairly productive. And I guess from about 2018, or about when Jim came to our farm, and when we had a bit of a tough patch, we'd thrown a lot of things out the window and have restarted gone completely to all beef. We've got back to about a couple of hundred breeders now, but mostly backgrounding young cattle for Kim's operation. And we've tried to have a bit of a focus on kilos of beef per hectare and being efficient and using our grass as best we can rather than being wasteful with it. So that's brought about things like in-paddock weighing and measuring and monitoring and things like that to give us direction and give us something we can manage. And that, along with an ever-evolving sort of higher density type rotation grazing, there's a million different names for it, and we're forever changing still. So when we get back to my place, we'll see there's two different weighing, in-paddock type weighing systems. We've got an OptiWeigh and TrueTest have been nice enough to give us a walkover weigh platform to play with. We're still very new to that. We don't know where that's going to lead, but we'll have a look at those two things and have a look at 500 cattle in one mob grazing at a density of sort of 100 cattle to the hectare on short duration, sort of longer rest recovery type things, and just spark a bit of conversation around all those things, I think. Now I thought we'd have a bit of a chat about the weighing systems and stuff we've got going on here, and then we're going to get a bit creative and see if we can move a big mob of cattle into that paddock, and with enough people watching, I'm sure we'll stuff it up. So what we've got going on is that OptiWeigh system behind us, that blue one. That's our first look at in-paddock weighing. So cattle they access that. They are attracted by a molasses lick block, reads their ear tag, front feet weighs the cattle, sends the data to somewhere in Queensland, goes through a bit of an algorithm and spits us back a live weight. So we get an idea of our live weight gains and our live weights daily from there. Of course, we're sort of constrained a little bit by it's only the cattle that access that system. So they give us a guide of what the mob's doing, just telling us stuff in the paddock that we think we know what's going on, but it tells us exactly what is happening. So things like transition into autumn and out of spring just gives us an idea of what we're looking at the grass, but what it's actually doing, and lets us make decisions around what we should do with the cattle to maximise their weight gains, or hold them up but do something better by the grass. So TrueTest data marts have got in developing or we've released now a walkover weigh platform, and that's we've got one of them just down there that works a little bit differently, so the cattle have to walk over the platform to be weighed. The idea of that, and we're still new, because we move cattle so often, that's a pretty stationary unit, so we haven't been able to play with it like we'd really like to. Eventually there's a wheel kit coming where we can chase the cattle around with it, and when we do moves like we're going to do today, we should be able to get a whole mob weight of the cattle, and eventually, which we're hesitant to rush into too much, but eventually the Holy Grail would be that we would be able to draft with the draft module that we've just set up as a dummy on the front of there today. So we walked 100 heifers down here the other day, or 70 heifers, sorry. Walked them, weighed the whole lot on the way through here to walk over the road. This mob are not trained to it because we don't have the kit to follow them and get them sort of ready for it. And I'm not going to walk them over it today because we will end up with a wreck. The idea in the future, and hopefully we'll get to one day, is with that white tape we've got there, that we'd walk these cattle past that walkover platform. Say the heavies come this way and keep on going to the yards and find a truck to Kim's, and the light ones go straight out into there, and we haven't interfered with what they're doing for the day. So that's the end goal, I guess, if we and when we get there. But we're still in development with that along the way.
In terms of extra live weight gain, what do you reckon this, when it's fully operational, is going to be worth to you?
But I know that we paid for the OptiWeigh in the first spring in 1 month, where we'd been moving cattle, doing really well. They're probably doing 1.6, 1.8. We'd moved them into a rotation that Jim and I thought we had 28 days ahead of us. And that thing started spitting back that we're flattening out. And I said, oh, it's buggered, send it back. But we took them back to the yards, and things had flattened out way before we thought they had. There wasn't the grunt in the grass that we needed. We changed up the management, shifted them to some different pastures that actually had a bit more grunt in it, and picked our 1.5 back up and could carry that for another month. So on a big mob of grazing cattle, like Kim alluded to before, that you can make or do dollars really quickly, and that one particular management decision is probably worth 20 grand.
On that same vein, Kent, can you also just talk about the costs that you've saved by putting a system in like this, rather than having your boys bringing cattle in, weighing for the day? Could you put a figure on what it costs you, say, per hour, per day, to have them walking the cattle in, weighing them, having the cattle off feed, not gaining weight, and then how long that would take you to pay off the system?
Same again. That's huge, isn't it, Kim? We talk about that a bit. That we're I think 3.5 k's from the yards here, over the back end of our farm's a fair hike. If we pull some cattle out of there and walk them home, we can weigh fairly efficiently at home now. We're fairly quick, but we have them in and out of the yards, and they walk back to wherever they're going next. It can be, 6, 8 hours. Doesn't sound like much, but you do it once a month on 1,000 cattle for a year. It's, what's that, 12,000 weighs. If that costs you a kilo a time, that's straight away 12,000 kilos without, and it will be more than that. Well and truly, yeah. So yeah, what's 50,000 kilos of beef worth today, without your labour or anything else? We're still using some labour, let's face it, to move these things and do stuff. It's not free, so maybe it costs us more to be moving that more often in labour, but in live weight gain and in kilos of beef, and that's a reasonable focus we have here, is trying to get as much kilos of live weight gain as we can for our efforts.
And can you just comment a little bit, Ken, on the data that you've had out of the OptiWeigh when you were looking at making a decision on the timing of your moves? So you were going at the peak of your pasture, you're doing daily moves, and then you tried to push it out to 2 daily moves and longer, and you're looking at the data of what the Opti was saying that your weights were doing. Can you just give a bit of comment what happened there?
Yeah, you can actually get an indication, and especially around sort of day 3, day 4, if you're on longer management moves. We're almost entirely on day shifts now, and we feel like we're doing our best when we're moving once a day. But you could see the pattern where they'd go into fresh grass like they will today in there. There'll be a spike, they'll lift in live weight, and then over the next day or two they'll drop down and then spike again as you're moving them. So you can use the tool as a which day do I shift? And you've got 2 questions to ask, I suppose, or answer is are you there for the extra kilo on the animal, and then, or does your grass need them to do some more work for you? And that you leave them there even at a live weight cost to grow more dry matter or more grass.
We talked a lot before about transitioning cattle onto their diet. This system here, you know, you can sort of see it's very consistent what it is that they're going from each day, and how you can achieve that transition very easily and keep them on the same kind of nutrition. Can you just give us a bit of an overview about what your grazing system is here? You know, the rotations that you're doing, the timing of your movements, your decision making with your stocking rates, those sorts of things. Can you give us a bit more information there?
So it's ever evolving. So we're playing and changing with different densities and durations of graze. We did get down to last autumn. We got down to 12-hour shifts. That gets pretty full on. I think we'd like to stay definitely under 3 days, probably 2 days to a day, and the density of how many we're putting in there. Like Kim alluded to before, there's a trade-off. We won't do as much individual animal performance in there as a set stock system. If we just put 10 in every paddock, they would do more per animal, but we will get more per hectare farm-wide over the course of the year, grazing with more density. We get to a point where Bevan is, I don't know, but I've talked to Bevan an awful lot about this stuff as well, but we get to a point where they are grazing more non-selectively. We did have a fair amount of cape weed pressure in this one on my left, that they'll take that out because they have to. If they don't grab it, someone else will. So how we can get to more kilos per hectare per year is by that they consume everything. And some of it is at a bit of a cost to them, but I don't know if this answers your question or not. But it's all a complete work in progress, and we're ever changing with the season and the grass and what we think is working best. But
Kent, you just alluded to the fact that the cape weed's been taken out because you're forcing them to eat it. It begs the question to me, what is this grazing system going to do to your long-term pasture composition? Or what have you observed so far? And what do we do about that?
Well, it's great for pasture composition. If you can get your pasture set up well, they don't target and take out all your grasses and leave your clover dominant, or don't target things. If you graze to the grass you want, if you want to focus on the ryegrass, graze on leaf emergence and graze for the ryegrass. The rest's incidental. If you want to look after something else, then you can alter that management to suit. So I guess that's a real plus. We don't have problems with things like bloat or other problems because they've got a varied diet. They've got a bit of everything. That's not a problem.
So can you throw some figures at us, Kent? What would your percentage of pasture utilisation be, do you think?
Don't know. I'm hoping that we can push well above 50-60%.
To put that in perspective, talking about utilisation, you might think 50% is very low, remembering that the average beef producer is probably using less than 30%. And the other scary figure is they are under 300 kilos of live weight sold per hectare. So a lot of people have got low stocking rates and they're only selling like 300 kilos per hectare off their farm, whereas Kent's talking 700, and utilisation of 50% plus is a very, very good job.
So at any one time, Kent, what percentage of your property is being grazed?
We're trying to be well less than 5%. You know, if we could be 3%, the way I see it, we've got 90% growing, 97% growing grass.